What is up, guys? Welcome to our next restoration. This one is an old farm jack that I'm going to restore, or high lift jack. This is one actually that I've had for quite a while, and the rusting is actually my fault. As you can tell here, it's not working very well. This is a jack that I've actually had for quite a while. It was in the back of my Tacoma truck, which I had out of commission for a couple years. And this was sitting in my toolbox, like in the bed toolbox. And it got some water in it, and this was sitting in a pool for a while. Bad on me, but it's time to restore it. So first off, I needed to remove all the pins and the different attachments. This took just a little bit of hammer persuasion first off. You can just see it is so rusty. It's so bad. This was kind of crazy too. As soon as I got this handle off, it started loosening stuff up. It's crazy inside there. I actually still got more off that's not on the camera. Banging it around, I stuck some stuff down there, cleaned it out some more. Now to take apart the rest of this, I had to then just disassemble it. These high lift jacks or farm jacks are not the most complicated things. They're quite clever the way they're put together with the different climbing pins. The second cross pin on the top climbing pin was really in there tight. Took a bunch of persuasion before I was able to get it out. All of the hardware, except for maybe the pins on this, seemed like they were in restorable condition. The springs were still quite good and still had quite a bit of spring. And this last cotter pin was again, took a little bit of persuading to get out. It was very rusty and bent up quite a bit. So I'm planning on sticking this in Evaporust, and before I did that, I wanted to make sure I got off as much of the loose rust as I could, because this was really bad. I mean, look at that. It was crazy. There was so much rust. And after lots of scrubbing, it was time for the Evaporust. Now, this was 1 gallon. I actually had to get out my old gallon and mix the two together to be able to have enough Evaporust to cover all of the hardware in this high lift jack. And this was excluding the handle and the rail, or the arm. I don't know what you would call it. But after these had soaked for a couple days, rinsed them off to kind of get the Evaporust residue off, and then it was just a bit of cleaning up after that. Once that was done, I used that same Evaporust to clean up the jack arm here. I just needed a bigger tote. I needed something long enough. And to displace some of the water, I just put these other containers in with my kettlebells. While that was soaking, it was time to clean up the rail. And this really involved a lot of grinding grinding, 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 into the evening grinding. It's high carbon, apparently. Grinding. I then had to go in and clean the holes out too. Did that with my rotary tool. And then I took the handle out of the evaporust after it had been in there for, I don't know, a couple days. And there was still paint on it that needed to be cleared off and just prep work. And then all of the other parts too, there was a little bit of paint and it'd been sitting for another day or two and it got a little rust. Needed clearing off before I did paint. Now, there were some people who suggested maybe I should copper plate this. I didn't think that would be very durable and maintain its look over time. But this copper thing is kind of becoming my color, along with some blue. So I thought I would do a two-tone thing here with copper and then some blue to contrast that copper color. So I just painted these up with this Krylon rust paint. I know that it's going to get dinged up as I use this with my Tacoma back in action. I'm actually planning on restoring that, doing some restoration work to it. Maybe we'll go with a blue and copper theme on that on my Tacoma. I don't know. We'll talk about that in future videos maybe. Once it was all painted, it was time to reassemble, and I got new cotter pins. Basically new hardware actually to hold this thing together. That new pin's going to do a little better than the old rusty one. Look at that. Isn't that cool? Two-tone colors. That spring still had plenty of spring in it. It was nice to reuse it. There was no need to buy some new ones, although you can find those, and the different cotter pins and other pins like that you can find at hardware stores. I found mine at Ace Hardware. I prefer the Ace Hardware locally. It's a little smaller. I don't know. I try to avoid the big box hardware stores. Now I'm placing the lifting pins. You place them with the wedge shape towards the top of the jack. I learned that because I actually put them in correctly the first time, and it didn't quite work when they were incorrectly. So now, like stretching out these cotter pins took me a little bit. I didn't show all of that on camera, but it took me a bit to figure out a way to kind of pry those apart, and found that a nice small flathead screwdriver works well to get wedged in between. And then I'll show you on this next little one. Once I've got the pin placed, get the screwdriver in there to pry it apart just a little bit. And once I get it in there, pry it a bit, and then I grabbed a second screwdriver to pry it even further, pry them both apart. That seemed to work pretty good. And I did that on that last of the third pins here. Silly me. Springtime. Got the birds chirping in the background. That's it assembled. I quite like the two-tone look. I think it looks great. This turned out good. The paint is going to scratch a bit, and you can see that here already from putting it on and assembling it and testing it a little bit. It did scuff the paint, but that's going to happen. This is going to be a using tool. I used it in the past and will continue to use it in the future. And it works great. So if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button. I like to do restorations, and I have a lot of things in the works. I enjoy sharing my projects with all y'all. And so look for opportunities to give those old things new life. And we'll see you on the next video. Ciao. It climbs well. Look at that. It's climbing, climbing. With that, it's set into climb mode. And you've got it. And this isn't quite a high lift jack. I don't know the brand. Clip that down, and then it climbs back down. And when you lift it straight up, it releases it and drops. Works good. Ciao.